Hi guys, today we are going to be talking about novels. So let me share my screen. All right, so by now you should have already completed the pre-test for Unit 3. If you have not, you need to start that now. You need to stop the video and start the test. The pre-test is just to see how much you know before we actually learn about novels. And then after the pre-test, you should have finished the study guide notes. So if you have not done that, you need to stop this video and get the study guide notes done first. Okay, so assuming that you have both of those done already, we're gonna go ahead and jump in here. And this PowerPoint is called Understanding Novels, Definition and History. I'm gonna skip this part because it was already on your pre-test. Okay, so what is a novel? The definition of a novel is that it's a long work that is complex. It has complex characters, multiple plots or problems, and various, which means many themes. The detailed description of a novel is that it has many characters and they do different things in various places. Novels can be about real life or they can be made-up adventures. When you read a novel, you follow the story from the beginning to the end, discovering what happens to the characters and how the plot unfolds as you read the story. Novels are a great way to enjoy reading and to learn new words in a language. Okay, next we have, hold on, I have to move this out of the way. Next we have key features of a novel. So there are several key features that we need to discuss, and those are, whoops, hold on. Sorry, those are plot, characters, setting, and theme, okay? So the plot is like the main challenges or problems in a story. And the way that some people describe it is that it's a roadmap of a story that helps you understand how the story unfolds and what happens to the characters along the way. It's like following the exciting path of the story's adventure and discovering what's going to happen next. Characters are the people or animals in the story, okay? So they are the ones doing the actions in the story. Setting are the places that the story takes, that the story happens, okay? So an example could be like, if the story is about someone at school, then the school would be the setting. If they're always talking about what the student does while they're at school, where they go inside of the school itself would be the setting. If let's say the story is about like a dog and the dog lives in the woods, then the woods would be the setting because that's where everything that happens in the story is going to take place. It's going to happen in the woods. And then we have theme, which is the big idea or message in the story. Usually stories have multiple themes, okay? So what I mean by that is you might have a story where they're talking about romance, okay? They're talking about love, but they could also, maybe somebody dies in the story. So then another theme besides love would be death. Maybe they have financial struggles, which means they have problems getting money, okay? Maybe they are really poor and they can't afford food. And so now that story, the themes become love and death and finances, okay? So there can be lots of different themes within one story. Okay, so there's several different genre types of novels. One would be a fiction. So fiction are stories that are not true. The things that happen in the story are not real. The people are not real. The events are not real. And then you have nonfiction, which is the opposite. Nonfiction are true stories about real people and real events, real things that happened. Now, nonfiction stories can kind of change what actually happened, or they might add characters or take characters away from the story. And it still would be nonfiction, even though some of the stuff they say in there is not completely true. Then you have historical novels. Historical novels tell stories about real people and events that happened a really long time ago. We also have science fiction, and science fiction are fake stories about science. Usually they're stories about like outer space, other planets, aliens. And then, of course, you have romance stories, and romance stories are stories about love and heartbreak. So, what are the benefits of reading novels? You're probably sitting there saying, I don't want to read a novel because you just said novels are really long. I get that. But there are at least three benefits to reading novels. And one is that it improves your vocabulary. In other words, it gives you more vocabulary to use while you are speaking and writing. You get bigger and better vocabulary. Also, you have better comprehension skills. Okay, so comprehension skills would be skills that help you understand what you're reading. The more you read, the more you practice reading, the more you understand what it is you're reading about. Also, you get cultural awareness and empathy. So, cultural awareness is when you learn about other cultures and you understand how things work in another culture. And empathy is when you are able to relate to people's feelings. So, empathy would be like if I'm really sad because one of my friends just passed away, that helps you to understand how I'm going to be feeling because you probably at some point will read a story about someone who had a person that's close to them pass away. And in the story, they'll talk about how the person that's still alive is feeling and all the different emotions that they go through. So it helps you in real life to be able to actually have empathy, have those feelings of understanding for people when they're going through something difficult. I have to keep moving this bar from Zoom. It's really annoying. Okay. Then we have the history of novels. So there's a couple different things we're going to talk about here. First, the history of novels in general. Novels have a long history, starting with simple stories that were told orally. That means people didn't write them down, they just told them from one person to another to another. And that was in the ancient times. And these stories often were about heroes, adventures, and they had moral lessons. I'm going to talk about moral lessons in just a second. So if you don't know what moral lessons are, we'll talk about it in just a minute. So let's look at the evolution of novels. How have novels changed throughout time? We're going to first talk about early stories. So the early stories that were told in ancient times, again, they were told orally, meaning that they were told just through speaking to other people. They were not written down. And then we have, we talked about moral lessons. So moral lesson is a lesson that the story teaches you about how to behave properly and politely in the world. Okay. So, most of these early stories would have taught people, like most of them, let's say the ones for children, they would have taught children to listen to their parents or to not talk to strangers. Okay, those are moral lessons. All right, and then, excuse me, that, whoops, if we look at the ancient texts, in ancient Greece and Rome, people wrote long stories in prose. That just means in sentences. And it says that them writing the stories in prose was laying the groundwork for written storytelling. Okay. So at some point, these sentences turned into very long paragraphs. And then in the Middle Ages, stories were written as epic poems about romances, often about knights, love, and quests. So quest is like when somebody sends you out to do something. And it could be like an adventure, okay, or really dangerous. Okay, and then we have the rise of the novels. So in the 17th and 18th century, longer fictional stories focusing on characters and personal lives shaped the novel. So that is how the novel started. Okay, the first novel that is known is called The Tale of, I'm going to say this wrong, Genji. I should have looked it up, but I forgot. Okay. And again, I'm going to say the author's name wrong, but it was written by Murasaki Shikibu in Japan around the early 11th century. This novel tells the story of a prince's life and his relationships, and it captures the emotions and experiences of the characters. Some famous novels that you should know about from several different time periods, we'll look over those right now, are like European novelists in the 18th century Europe. Writers like Daniel Defoe and Samuel Richardson made novels popular, and they explored everyday life and emotions in their novels. In the 19th century, there were novelists like Charles Dickens and Jane Austen, and they were famous for their novels that discussed social issues, and they portrayed diverse characters. So by social issues, that means things that are going on in the world that society or the people that live in that country or city or town might think are important or unjust, like not right, they shouldn't be happening, or things that they wanted changed. And then where it says portray diverse characters, that means that the characters were really interesting. They had a very deep background, a lot of detailed background. I'm not sure why this is showing up like this, and I'm not going to fix it at the moment. I'll have to fix it later. But modern novelists would be from like the 20th century up to today. And these were novels that continued to change with diverse genres. So they started adding more and more genres and different types of texts. They also had different styles to their writing. And some of these novelists would be Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Haruki Murakami. And then, of course, we have on here diverse stories of today. Nowadays, novels come in many different genres. We've already talked about a lot of those, like romance and science fiction. And they provide readers with a wide range of stories and experiences. Basically, what that means is that today you can pretty much find a story about anything. It could be in any genre, and anything that you could wish to read about is probably out there somewhere already written. Whoops. Okay. This is actually an activity we already did before we started our novel unit. And that is where you wrote about your favorite novel, or if you haven't read a novel, you wrote about your favorite story, and we did a discussion about it. We had to kind of change the instructions because we had had an e-learning day. Okay. So we're going to start talking about Sherman Alexie. Okay, Sherman Alexie is a current novelist, and he has written a book that we are going to read. So let's just get some background information about Sherman Alexie, like where was he born? How many siblings does he have? What kinds of different jobs has he had? Stuff like that. So Sherman Alexie was born October 7th in 1966 in Wilpennett, Washington. So that's clear over on the other side of the United States. He was raised on the Spokane Indian Reservation. Okay, we're going to talk about what a reservation is, and we're also going to discuss this word Indian as well in just a couple of minutes. And he belongs to two different tribes. Okay, so tribes would kind of be like an easy way for you guys to understand it would probably be if you're from different countries. Okay, like if I said you're Burmese or you're Mexican, you're Venezuelan, and I'm American. Okay, only the difference is that tribes can all be from the same country, okay? But the different tribes speak different languages almost always, and they have different cultures and different practices and different religions, okay? So Sherman Alexie is actually part of two different tribes. He is part of the Spokane Indian tribe and the Coeur d'Alene Indian tribe. His father is Sherman Joseph Alexie, and his mother is Lillian Agnes Cox. He has 5 siblings, both brothers and sisters, and he has 2 sons. He's also married, but I didn't put his wife's name on here. And then he has had several different jobs, even as an author. So as an author or a writer, he has written novels, short stories, poems, and screenwriting. So screenwriting is when you write a story that is going to be made into some type of film. Also, he has been a filmmaker, so he's actually produced and recorded different movies. There are movies out there that you can see that he's made. And he is a public speaker. So he goes into a lot of different schools. Well, I don't know if he still does, but he used to go into different schools and speak. But he also does like a lot of different interviews to explain his life and where he comes from and the different jobs that he has had, things he has written about. Now, Sherman Alexie, like many of us, has had different problems. So we are going to talk about some of those problems, but we need to keep in mind everybody has problems. So Alexie has had a drinking problem. He is sober now, but a drinking problem, also called alcoholism, is when a person drinks every day or nearly every day. So he did struggle with that for quite a while, and I'm sure he struggles with it even now on a daily basis, though he has not had a drink in several years. And also, one of the problems, which I will explain and discuss in a minute, has to do with Me Too accusations. Okay, so by accusations, that means people are saying he did something he should not have done. That has to do with the Me Too movement. One of his popular novels that we're going to actually read in class is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. So that's actually what we're going to discuss here on this next slide. So on the next slide, we're going to just talk about like what the story's about, when it was written, awards that have been given because of the story and whatnot. Okay, so The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian was written in 2008. And the plot, now this was kind of my own summary because I've read the story, okay? So it's not like a summary that I pulled off of the internet or anything. Basically, in this story, the main character's name is Junior, okay? And Junior is a Native American, and he's living in Washington, which is, if you remember, that's where Sherman Alexie was born and raised. So Junior, in the story, it talks about like all these different struggles that Junior goes through, like struggles with the school books being too old. Okay. The school books are like 20, 30 years old. They haven't been changed out in a really long time. And he also talks about struggles with friendships and with struggles with love. He has struggles with wanting to leave where he's living to go to a different school so that he can get what he considers a better education. So he also tries to find his identity, and like I said, he kind of fights for his right for education. So when Sherman Alexie first wrote this story, he did not consider it to be a, whoa, hold on. Perfect. Okay. He didn't consider it to be an autobiography, which is when someone writes about themselves in their own life, okay? And it wasn't actually until years after he had written it that he accepted this story as an autobiography, but it really is about his life, okay? So he actually classifies it, or I shouldn't say he does, but the internet classifies this book as a family memoir, okay? A family memoir is like memories that you have of your family, usually from when you were young, okay? So in other words, this is a true story about Sherman Alexie and his family from when he was younger. This book has won multiple awards, which you can read about down here if you would like. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some kind of controversial words here or confusing words. So we have the word Indian and Native American. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of give you the definition here from Webster Dictionary. Indian is, the definition of Indian is relating to or denoting indigenous peoples. Indigenous means the first people that lived somewhere. Indigenous peoples of North, Central, and South America, especially those of North America. And then Native American is a member of the indigenous peoples of North, Central, and South America, especially those indigenous to what is now the continental United States or North America. Okay, so there has been controversy between, well, I guess mainly with the word Indian when I was growing up. Okay, so we were taught when I was very little to say the word Indian. Okay, and then as I got older, it was not socially acceptable to say Indian anymore. We were taught that we need to say Native American. Now, the interesting thing about this is that depending on which tribe people are from, or even independent people, okay, they could be from the same tribe, but they still, some of them prefer to be called Indian, some prefer to be called Native American. So it could depend on the tribe that you're from, or it could just depend on your personal preference, okay? So both of these words are acceptable today, but I would say if you don't know, if you know someone who is from a tribe, I would stick with saying they're Native American until you know what they prefer to be called. okay? And then we have the word reservation and res. Okay, these words really aren't that controversial. It's just more of one is an abbreviation. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But a reservation is an area of land set aside for occupation by North American Indians or Australian Aboriginal people, okay? So basically a reservation is a place where we're like, oh, this part of the country, only Native Americans can live here, and like no one else can live there unless the Native American people say so, which is going to be very rare probably. And then we have the word res. Res is just an abbreviation, a shortened word of the word reservation, okay? It has the same meaning though, the same meaning, the same definition as reservation. Now, the bad thing about reservations, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right? But one of the things that I feel like I should say is that considering Native Americans were here before we were, in my opinion, this is having them live on a reservation is not the proper thing to do, okay? Basically, when the Europeans came over to the United States, they killed Native Americans and took away their land, okay? And that's putting it politely. It's actually much more detailed than that, but I'm not going to get into it right now, okay? We'll talk about that later. So I guess you could say that reservation itself is controversial. All right. Because some people would prefer to be called Native Americans and some prefer to be called Indians, neither word is correct nor incorrect. However, like I said, most non-Native Americans use the term Native American, as Indian can be considered impolite or rude. And since res and reservation carry the same meaning, neither of them are correct nor incorrect either. Okay, another thing we need to talk about is kill the Indian in him and save the man. Okay, so this quote was said in a speech by Captain Richard Henry Pratt. And it was said in a speech at the National Conference of Charities and Correction in Denver, Colorado in 1892. The meaning, so I'm going to jump over here. What is the meaning of this? Kill the Indian in him and save the man. Let's kind of focus on this for a minute because this is actually a very pertinent, very important part of history that needs to be discussed. So to assimilate, let's discuss assimilate for a minute. Assimilate means to like resemble or fully become, which it actually says down here. It's to resemble or fully become like something or someone else, okay? So in other words, it's like if I say, now that you're in the United States, you need to assimilate with our cultural clothing. That means you need to start wearing clothes from the United States, which I don't believe that way. I'm just using that as an example. Okay, so the meaning of to kill the Indian in him and save the man is to assimilate Native Americans into white culture and make them, quote, useful in the American industrial society. In other words, we wanted to be able to have them work for us, and we wanted them to look like us and dress like us and believe like us. So down here it says Pratt wanted to strip, which means take away any sign of the Native American culture and language and make the Native Americans blend in with the white culture. And he wanted them to adopt the white culture, ethics, and beliefs. In plain words, he wanted the Native Americans to look like, talk like, work like, and believe in everything the white man believed in. Oops. Okay, so one more important thing we have to talk about before the video is over here is the Me Too movement. Okay, so you guys have been around when the hashtag Me Too came out, okay? So the Me Too movement is actually older than hashtag Me Too, but we're going to kind of talk about this for a minute. What is the Me Too movement? It's a movement against sexual violence. So in other words, it is a group of people that have said, hey, sexual violence is not a good thing, and we need to bring it to everyone's attention and start doing something about it. This movement is dedicated to creating pathways for healing, justice, action, and leadership. That's directly from the Me Too movement page. Sherman Alexie has been accused but not charged nor convicted of Me Too violations. In other words, people have said, hey, Sherman Alexie has committed sexual violence against other people, but it's never been proven. People have not taken him to court over it. At least he hasn't been convicted or charged with anything like this so far, okay? I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that there is, that we need to keep in mind that just because someone says that you did something wrong doesn't necessarily mean that you did. So Alexie has released a statement saying that he has harmed other people, okay? So it that I could find, there's no other detail other than that he has, quote, harmed other people, okay? And that was in the New York Times. So it is definitely a reliable source, but I don't know exactly what that means by harmed other people. Again, I want you to keep in mind that while these accusations may be true, they also may be false. We don't know, okay? And Alexie declined, which means he did not accept some of his awards due to people saying that he had done some things wrong. Hold on here. I don't know why it's doing that. It keeps putting a banner across the bottom. Anyway, so after the Me Too movement, he was offered some awards and he turned them down. And that is all the detail I have on that, but I'm assuming because he turned them down because of the fact that he did say he has harmed other people. Okay, so that's it for today. After you have finished viewing this video, I would like you to just get some homework help. Thank you. Have a good day.